So without further ado, I would like to say hello to David Doko from Canon. Hey David, how are you doing today?
Hey James, good afternoon, and thank you for inviting Canon to be a part of this annual event now, which is NDI November, and we have a lot to talk about today. Thank you.
Yes, 6 years of NDI November. We're very proud of that, and thank you for joining us for another NDI November. Now, before we get into our show, can you just introduce yourself and Canon to our audience?
Yes, my full name is David Doko, and I am a senior technical specialist for Canon. I support their cinema line as well as the PTZ. The PTZ and cinema line are really well integrated together, which is why that falls under my area of responsibility. So I hope to be able to support you and your audience, in their integrations for PTZs or cinema cameras. And Canon has been, really successful at this point with our PTZ line. We are continuously expanding upon our product line with new models, as we're going to discuss, and the new features with XC protocol for IP integration and our controllers. So yeah, I'd love to talk to your audience about two new models that we just announced.
All right, so without further ado, let's talk about the brand new CR-N400 and the CR-N350 PTZ cameras. Can you tell us a little
Fantastic.
bit about these cameras?
Right. So some of your audience may be wondering, why did we introduce two new models in our PTZ lineup? We do have quite a few models already. Uh, the reason is because a lot of people like the CR-N300. That's our entry level SDI PTZ camera. People love the form factor. It's really small. They love the 20 times zoom. They love the image quality. But other customers wanted more, of course. They want more features, kind of with that 20 times zoom. They want the 4K 60p. They want Genlock, timecode inputs. They want LUT support, and they want more customization for the custom picture profiles. Those features are all in our flagship CR-N700. So with these two models, we are bringing those kind of flagship features into these two new PTZ models, and that's the whole reason why we introduced them.
I think that is fantastic. We always like it when a manufacturer listens to their, customers and, not to say that the CRN 100 and 300 aren't great cameras, they are, and not to say that the CRN 500 and 700 aren't great cameras, but now having a camera in between those models, I think is great, and that you are bringing some of those, like you said, flagship features down to the CRN 350, CRN 350, and CRN 400. Can you talk about some more of those features a little bit more in depth here?
Yes, the uh, the two PTZs, these two new PTZs, have the same sensor. They're 1/2.3 inch size sensors, and they have outstanding image quality. The N300 could do 4K 30p. These two new PTZs can do 4K 60p. The CRN400 in particular can do 4K 60p over SDI, and they send out this video signal with 4 to 210-bit color sampling. That's a very high spec.
Yeah.
They of course are complemented by the same 20 times optical zoom, and they have the what's called a full HD zoom feature, which I'm going to get into. Um, we've added really slow pan and tilt functionality to both these PTZs, so you can really kind of crawl those movements if you wish. They can do 0.1 degrees per second, which is really slow. They have numerous new SDI ports, like the N400 can do the 12G and 3G dual SDI, which we're going to see in a second. And then the 350 has 3G and HDMI. And they also have what's called hybrid autofocus. So hybrid autofocus is a combination of contrast detect and phase detect autofocus, and it's really a great mixture of those two hot autofocus systems, and they can actually recognize heads, not just the face or the eyes. They can do head detection as well, and really just a really great lineup of features that are going to complement our product line.
Now, you mentioned some of the terminal points, the connecting points on these two cameras, and I think those are going to be some of the standout differences between them. So let's break this down and talk about the terminals that are available on the CR-N350, and then we'll talk about the advanced terminal inputs on and outputs on the CR-N400.
Yes, the CR-N350 has 4K HDMI 60p at that color sampling out of the HDMI. It does have 3G, which, as most of your audience knows, is capable of HD 60p resolution. It can be powered by PoE++. So both of these PTZs support PoE, Power over Ethernet++. And a really great feature about the CR-N350 is that USB-C port that you see here on the back of the schematic. So this CR-N350 can be used as a UVC camera for Zoom calls, for any number of purposes that employ UVC.
Great. And then now for the CR-N400, which has a lot more of the bells and whistles. Can you tell us about all of these different inputs and outputs that are available on the 400?
Yes, as you can see, you have a 12G port now with the N400. We're moving up, and the 12G is capable of that 4K 60p out and at 10-bit 422 color sampling. It also has the HDMI port, and it has that 3G port, which a lot of people who are familiar with the N700 will recognize with the functionality of that. I'm going to talk about that. But basically, that allows you to send out 2 video signals, dual crop mode. And we're going to see that in just a second. It has the XLR audio terminals. So those audio terminals can embed audio into your SDI signal. And like the M350, it does support PoE++. Both of these, by the way, of course, support the streaming protocols, streaming videos, and NDI HX2, SRT, RTP, RTMP, RTSP. And so they have the full complement of features, both internally and by the ports.
Absolutely. And we're going to talk a little bit about, it is NDI November. So we are going to talk a little bit about the IP connections later on as well. And then this slide is to just kind of show you that it really is in between the CR-N100, 300, and the CR-N500 and 700. It's kind of right in the middle, perfect Goldilocks size. Now, you mentioned that both of these cameras also have the 20x optical zoom, which is great for being able to zoom into your subjects that are, far away. But then you mentioned something that I think is really important too, is that you have the ability to do the full HD 40x advanced zoom. Can you explain to our audience what that is and how that works?
Yes. The 40x advanced zoom is not a digital zoom. Some people will get confused as what this feature actually does. When you set the camera, either one of these cameras, in it basically just output full HD 1920 by 1080, it utilizes the 4K resolution, the native 4K resolution of the sensor, to allow you to have that 40 times zoom on the telephoto end. So really, it's utilizing the fact that you want to output in HD, but you have this 4K capability, so you really can get far in that telephoto end.
I think that is fantastic. Being able to give the end user the choice of being able to have that extended zoom. I see this concert here as a perfect example, or a house of worship where you need to have that camera, let's say 100 feet away, with a 40x zoom. It's not going to be any issue to be able to zoom in right up to whoever's speaking, whoever's playing that instrument, or whatever.
Exactly.
So I think that is great. Now, another thing that is really cool about these cameras is that you can use LUTs to have color profiles be imported into the camera for the output. Can you kind of explain what a LUT is and how that works in this workflow?
Yes. For those who do not know, LUT is a lookup table. And basically what it is a series of a numerical table that changes that can change the look of your camera. So the image that's being sent out can be, can it be Canon Log 3, or can be a variation of Rec 709 that we support in our custom presets, custom profiles. And so what a LUT does is, if you want, for whatever reason, you want some special look, or artistic reasons, creative, technical reasons even, you can actually load a LUT through our XC protocol. You can load up a LUT in these both the N50, N350, and N400, just like in the N700. And that's really gives you a lot of customization possibilities for the look you want when you really want to get specific about color. And I know a lot of you professionals, of course, want that control.
No, absolutely. And giving the end user that control option is just fantastic. And then also, we're talking about color matching, and these cameras color match perfectly with other cameras in the Canon line. Is that correct?
Yes, they come much very closely. Of course, if there's a different sensor, there's just slight differences that we can actually, correct with a LUT, of course. That's a part of the demo that I'm going to do a little later. But they share the same custom, profiles and color presets that we have in our Cinema EOS lineup of cameras, the C400, the C80, and now the new C50. So it's great that when you have an integrated environment, and all these cameras can be controlled through our controller or applications with our XC protocol. Such a great way to integrate, multiple camera setups for your events.
Yeah, and we're going to talk about the XC protocol in just a minute here. Before we get into that, though, we also mentioned the crop functionality with the 3G SDI output on the CR-N400. Can you tell us a little bit about that and how that could be used in a workflow too?
Yes, thanks for bringing that up. So the CR-N400 has, like we saw on the back of the terminal schematic, it has a 12G for 4K and a 3G. And both of these terminals can actually output different framing. So you could actually send out like the full wide, either in 4K HD on the 12G, and you could send out whatever crop you want on the 3G. So a lot of times people might wonder, what's that for? Well, it's sort of obvious. You can have two sizes. So you're really saving on the number of cameras that you need to send out a program where you want a wide and a crop, or two crops. And that can be very useful to save on basically on gear and people power. So yeah, that's really the reason for that function. The 350 does not have the dual crop. However, you can do a crop on the 350 with IP streaming. So that's, again, very useful crop functions in both of these cameras.
You mentioned the IP crop function, so I just pushed the slide forward. Do you want to explain that a little bit, and how that works on both the CR-N350 and the CR-N400?
Yes. So you can send out, multiple two streams from both of these camera, and you can decide on basically on two IP crops. You can send out the full screen output, and then you can have an IP crop that's basically a tighter shot, or near the wide shot, but not quite the full frame of the wide shot. So any really crop you want, and that can be sent over IP as well as SDI.
That's great. And then while we're on the topic of being able to crop things, you have expanded crop functions, which you can actually take a 9:16 crop out of these cameras as well, right?
Right. And this is an important new function that I really wanted to highlight for our audience, is that these two new PTZs can do a vertical crop. So that 9:16 can be extracted from the full, height of that 4K sensor. And so that 9:16 can be moved around, and I'll show that in a little bit in our demos. And this is, of course, very useful for social media. And so I really encourage people to try this feature out when they get a chance.
No, absolutely. And you showed me before we did our show here today. It really is simple, and we're going to push to that demo, but just a couple more slides to get through, and then we'll go to our demos. Now, we did mention at the top of the show as well that the the CR-N350 and CR-N400 support various IP protocols, including NDI HX2, being able to send an SRT destination, being able to stream directly to an RTMP destination. But then you also have a bunch of control protocols that are supported as well. And we keep talking about the XC protocol. And I think there's a slide on it, so I'm going to skip ahead. Can you tell us a little bit about the XC protocol and how it works across a lot of range across Canon's camera range?
The XC protocol is Canon's proprietary IP camera control protocol. You can get previews, like image previews, thumbnails, using this protocol, but it's not meant for streaming, just to be clear. It's meant for control of all our devices. And it not only, like I mentioned before, it not only works with our PTZ devices, it also works with our cinema cameras, including the C50 that we just announced. And all that, the image parameters of all these cameras can be controlled, with these commands through XC. So it's not just a controller-based protocol. A lot of software that we've built, such as the remote camera control application, which you'll see in a second, will be able to control all these cameras through IP.
No, and I think that's fantastic. You mentioned a few slides ago saying that we want to make this as cost effective as we can for the customer, and being able to get one controller that can control every aspect of the Canon camera line is fantastic. I kind of skipped over this, but I want to go back to this. It is NDI November. I know we're talking about AV over IP in general, but it is NDI November, so I couldn't skip over this entirely. NDI HX2 compatibility with these cameras. Can you kind of walk us through a workflow that is all NDI? And before you do that, I want to say I want to give a plug to Netgear for their switches, which they do have PoE++ switches available for this workflow. But can you kind of walk us through both the NDI workflow and then the SRT workflow that you have here?
The NDI HX2 is really friendly for local network environments, and the NDI protocol itself is something that we support through our entire line of PTZ products. It's always included. We do not charge an additional licensing fee for you to utilize the NDI HX2, and the setup is very simple. So for the most part, NDI, as most of you know, is used for the most part locally and on private networks. We also support SRT, secure reliable transfer protocol, and that is also a high quality streaming protocol that is more often used for transmission over the internet. So there's a differentiation between those two, but we really value both these protocols, and we will continue to support them fully in our PTZ products for video streaming.
That's great, and I think you kind of said it, summed it up perfectly. That NDI, for the most part, even though they are working on NDI Bridge to be able to have the camera feeds be able to go over the network, for the most part, NDI is used on your local network. You plug your cameras into your network switch, you plug your controller into your network switch, and through that one cable, you're able to power the cameras, you're able to get the video off of the cameras, and you're also able to get the control to those cameras. But then SRT is being able to send the camera somewhere, and then it send the video feed back to a production system over the wide area network. And like you said, these are both completely viable solutions, and I think that it is great that Canon is continuing to develop AV over IP with their cameras, and both locally and across the network. Now, David, we talked a lot about the CR-N350 and the CR-N400, of course, because they are very new and very exciting. But you have a whole range of PTZ cameras that are available, right?
Yes. And I did mention in the start the CR-N300 and the CR-N100, which is basically the N300 without the SDI terminal. It's an HDMI only. Represent our entry level PTZs. Some people just like them low for the size. And then it goes to the N350, N400, and then our outdoor is the X300. And our flagship is the N700. So really a whole range of sensor sizes and also PTZ capabilities for the customer to meet your customer needs.
So at the end of the day, Canon, what you're saying is Canon has a camera for every workflow and every budget, right?
Absolutely, yeah, we do, and
All right.
I'm glad that you're profiling them.
Okay, great. So now we've talked about this demo that we're going to do. We're going to bring you up full screen, and the floor is yours to show us whatever features you want to
Yeah,
show on these new cameras.
thank you. And this is really not only an example of our application support for these PTZs, but also kind of really a demonstration of the power of XC protocol. So I'm going to switch over to my laptop, and here what you're seeing on the screen is something called the camera color matching application. So this application is no additional cost. I mentioned that both the N700 and the N350 and the N400 all have the capability of importing LUTs. So part of this LUT capability is extended to our application, this application, which can generate a LUT for you for these specific cameras and then upload the LUT. So I'm going to, just as a demonstration, I did actually, prior to this webinar, I did capture basically a chip chart, an X-ray color checker chip chart, and from our C300 Mark III with one of the kind of like legacy gammas and color gammas called the EOS STD standard, which is a Rec 709 based color gamut and gamma. So I'm going to actually, I have an N300 on the same chart and pointed to the same N350 pointed to the same chart. I'm going to capture the image from our controller. So what's really fantastic about some new capabilities that we are introducing is that the controller can actually enable you to capture frame grabs that you can utilize for this particular application. So I'm going to select the controller, and I'm going to capture the chart that's coming off the SDI feed into the controller. So the SDI is being fed into the controller. The controller communicates through XC protocol with the color matching application, and now we have two chip charts. So the M300, the N350, excuse me, the N350 is set for what's called a BT709 standard. So it's a different color profile and image parameters than the other camera, and this is really the purpose of the demonstration. When you're trying to match your PTZs, these three PTZs that have this functionality, to other cameras, it doesn't even have to be a Canon camera. It can be any camera. You could utilize this color matching application by shooting these chip charts, whether it's a Macbeth chart, color checker chart, and then you could actually create a LUT to match them. And that's, of course, the name. So you can select a number of charts. I'm just going to select a grid chart because that's the most common, but it does support the chroma circle chart and the chroma frame chart. And I'm going to do an auto detect on these chips. So the reference is the original C300 Mark III, and I am auto detecting the chips on the chart. Great. You can actually manually modify that if for some reason the auto detect doesn't get the number and the rows correctly. And all you do is you basically generate a LUT to match these two. It takes a second to do that. Fantastic. So you could see, just kind of preview, if it includes a waveform monitor and vectorscope, you can see, and a preview up there, you can see as I apply the LUT, it actually is a fairly close match. And then I can send the same LUT to both these cameras. So if I had an N700 here, I could also send it to the N700. And as long as their custom picture profile is the same as the chip chart that I shot for the N350, which is basically, like, again, BT709 standard, then you could send it. Just a second. Great.
There it
Successful.
goes.
Yes. And now I'm going to go over to my browser, and you're going to, this is the N350. So now you see that actually there is a look file that's been loaded. And this is tying together that whole discussion about the look file. Now the look file is on, and you could actually turn it off. And this is the original image without any modification from that LUT that we just created. So through XE protocol, it loaded up this look file, and now you see that the image, the chart, is much closer to that C300 Mark III image that we captured previously. And voila, it's as simple as that. And you could either turn it off or turn it on, keep it on, and it really is meant to, help you not just with Canon cameras, but other cameras as well as you're integrating our PTZs into that environment. Now, moving forward, I just want to I'm going to close this down. Moving forward, I'd like to show you that crop feature. And so this is the N400, and you'll see that I've already kind of selected a crop, a 9/16 crop. Like say there was an influencer sitting on that, Canon director's chair, and you want to adjust that 9/16 crop. So you're getting that full, 2160 vertical resolution of that sensor. And really, you can move this around. You can move it around. It doesn't have to be the whole height of the sensor. It can be, a portion of that height. And it's all customizable for that. You can move it up and down. You can shrink it. And not only that, but you could switch it from the vertical crop to something else. So if you wanted to, do like a close-up, you could do that, like say with crop 1, and just move it to the head of the speaker. Again, this is called a remote camera control application. It's again included as part of the support that we give to our customers. It doesn't cost you anything else. It utilizes the XE protocol to control any number of cameras, and not just movement. You could do the movement, but you could also just really deeply, just like your controllers, you can deeply correct the image parameters, as you can see here, a lot of them. A really full-featured application for that. And yeah, so that was really the demonstration that I wanted to do for the audience, and I'm really happy that I got the chance. Thank you.
Well, thank you for showing off the remote camera control app and the XC protocol, really. I think that it's great that you guys make it so easy to be able to color match across the line, and you can do that with the EOS cameras and the PTZ cameras. David, I want to say thank you so much for joining us today. As always, whenever we have a guest, I like to give them the last word before we say goodbye. So is there anything that you want to say to our audience before we say goodbye?
I just again wanted to thank you, James, for inviting us to be part of NDI November. It's always a really great event for really disseminating information, and that's really important because people have to know, there's such a plethora of technology out there. We really have to get the message across what the options are to really achieve what they really want through event recording and cinema. Thank you.
Absolutely. Well, again, thank you so much, David. If anybody has any questions about the brand new cameras or really any of the Canon PTZ cameras, absolutely feel free to give us a call at 800-323-2325. And I will say thank you to David, and we'll see you next year.